Studios was closed. So to many, this Fable game coming in 2025 is sort of seen as a reboot. This is a chance at redemption. In other words, Fable has been with Xbox for a long time and hasn't really achieved high heights or celebration since Fable 2. So the thought of the game finally coming back with trailers that looked very promising and that ending up landing then on the PS5, well, you get a picture as why longtime fans of Fable would find that to be an unwelcome thing. Well, Jez doesn't seem to recommend holding on to the hope that Fable remains an exclusive. He replied to the question about Fable by saying this: that game was monstrously expensive. It might not be day one, but it'll come with the current plan in place, in my opinion. And this isn't the first time Jez has spoken about Fable. There is some credence to his claim. He spoke recently about seeing footage of the game and said it was fantastic looking, with some similarities to combat from The Witcher. He talked about how the footage had a level of polish that he didn't expect with respect to animation quality and acting quality because he assumed it was just alpha footage. So his opinion and prediction here is informed. The game looks good. It's hitting high quality in alpha builds and alpha footage, and that means it likely has a big budget. And if you consider the development timeline of the game, it being described as monstrously expensive doesn't sound far-fetched. In 2018, the game was announced as being developed by Playground Games, and they were hiring 177 positions for it. Then they officially announced the game in the 2020 Xbox Game Showcase, and then a year later, in 2021, Eidos Montreal joined the project as a co-developer. And by March of 2023, reports came that it was in the early stages of full production. So in the 6 years since they announced the game, they have likely spent a lot of money. But there's a bigger thing to observe here, and it's a very noticeable tone shift about this topic. Sometimes change at a company is subtle, sometimes it's tectonic, and I would say that this year has been a bit of a mixture of both, in large part due to messaging and marketing being somewhat unclear from Xbox. And one big aspect of what that was is how the more loyal to the Xbox platform spoke about the future and the brand. There was always assurances made and hope that nothing major was changing, but now it feels more like a shrugged shoulder form of acquiescence. We've already looked at a tweet from Jez and how he believes that Xbox will not have exclusives going forward, but someone asked a pretty big question. They said, well, why would you limit games like Hellblade 2, Avowed, and South of Midnight, but then let games like Indiana Jones, The Outer Worlds 2, and Doom be announced as multi-plat games? And Jez's response was surprising, and he rather candidly said, I heard they consider Hellblade exclusivity a mistake, which at some level is actually not surprising. The first Hellblade launched as a PlayStation timed exclusive, so leaving those potential fans out of the equation at launch is likely being viewed internally as a mistake. But this is a pretty huge insight into why things are changing so fast. One of the major tentpole titles that Xbox consistently use in its marketing is being considered a mistake with respect to exclusivity. They showed off Hellblade 2 quite a bit, which really makes you wonder, given how well Fallout 4 sold on the PlayStation, what does Xbox and Microsoft think about Starfield exclusivity and what that did to sales? But this all goes hand in hand with another big tone shift. The Outer Worlds 2 was originally announced as an Xbox exclusive, and observant viewers of the Game Awards 2024 noticed the latest trailer for the Outer Worlds 2, the end card shows PS5. Even the trailer currently on the Xbox channel shows this, while that same trailer is on the PlayStation channel and only shows PS5 with no other platforms listed, which makes sense. I don't expect Sony to, promote the game on other platforms because they're not the one publishing it. But this is just one more shift in the tone from Xbox, and to be quite honest, none of this is surprising. If you were following Xbox news closely in the late stages of 2023, then none of this is surprising. In early November, there was the Phil Spencer interview with Famitsu where he said that he considered PS5 and Nintendo Switch players part of the Xbox community. Then a few weeks later, the CFO at Xbox said that we would see a bit of a change of strategy as he spoke at a Wells Fargo summit, saying that Nintendo and PlayStation were no longer considered competitors and that we would see first-party games hitting those platforms. Then in early 2024, Satya Nadella says that Microsoft can now be games hitting those platforms. Then in early 2024, Satya Nadella says that Microsoft can now be a good publisher across all platforms, and he famously said, quote, we think that now we have the ability to do what we always set out to do, which is build great games and deliver them to folks across all platforms, which is Xbox and consoles, the PCs, and now even including mobile gaming and cloud gaming. And every step of the way, many were reticent to believe that this was happening. We were told that all of these comments were only about the APK catalog or games that were already multi-plat. But as I said, if you were paying attention, the recent tone shift and developments are not surprising. The era of exclusives are coming to an end. Reveals like the Indiana Jones coming to PS5 will continue to be normal. The end card of the Outer Worlds 2 is a bit of a rug pull. Hearing that Fable is likely headed to PlayStation, and that Hellblade 2 exclusivity is seen as a mistake. It honestly leaves me with a lot of questions. What sort of tension will there be between the Xbox Series S and the PS5 Pro? You have the weakest console on the market and the highest-end console on the market, and will this take direction of the devs and stretch it too thin? A potential future where all first-party Xbox studios are building for the Series S, the Series X, PC, PS5, PS5 Pro, and even maybe the Switch 2 could be a bridge too far. So there's a lot to conclude here, and none of what it is very comforting to long-standing Xbox console users. The first thing I have to say that really needs to be said is the infamous Xbox podcast with Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, and Matt Booty was nothing more than a bunch of smoke and mirrors and damage control. I saw through the nonsense, but many long-standing Xbox fans were convinced by that show to hold out hope. And now, as the sun begins to set on 2024, it feels like it will rise in 2025 on a very different Xbox. One where just as soon as the cadence of games finally picks up, they are seeing those games land on platforms that were once considered rivals. And while I do think there still will be two types of releases going forward for Xbox, some like Indiana Jones, which will be staggered, allowing Xbox and the Xbox ecosystem to enjoy the game first, you will also see games land like Doom the Dark Ages and The Outer Worlds 2, which is little consolation to those feeling like this is a betrayal, regardless of when and how it happens. And with how quickly things have changed, maybe one day giving games to Xbox and the Xbox ecosystem just won't matter anymore either. And when that happens, everything will indeed be an Xbox, which is to say, if everything is an Xbox, then nothing really is anymore. But those are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.